Prof, thank you so much for your time. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Is it Pantheon by?
Pantheon, yes.
Pantheon, that's the word. But we're talking about the Pan-African Pantheon, prophets, poets, and philosophers. Prof, I was just saying to you offline, this is such a book. You know, I haven't felt and actually went through the contents of a book which I respect its effort, I can see its effort. I also notice mostly that most contributors here are academics. Take me through this book and how long it took you to write it.
Well, thank you very much. We had a conference in June of 2017 at the University of Johannesburg, and we invited the scholars, the authors of the book, to present. Over 3 days, we had a conference, and it was recorded, and we had short documentaries of each of the figures. And then there was an editing process where we basically engaged with the authors, individual authors. We commissioned some more papers where we felt that there were gaps. But the idea is to produce a book on the most important Pan-African figures, both the well-known ones like Marcus Garvey and W.E. Du Bois, but maybe ones that would not necessarily be associated with mainstream Pan-Africanism, like Ruth First, Wole Soyinka, Miriam Makeba, Fela Kuti, Bob Marley. So it's a real labor of love that took 3 years, but the idea is to use these sorts of books to transform curricula in universities, because often the curricula that you read from are Eurocentric curricula, and those aren't the sort of curricula you should necessarily be reading in Africa. So we need to read Shakespeare, but you also need to read Soyinka, and often people say that this literature does not exist. That's the common complaint of academics. So getting together 37 African, Afro-Caribbean and African-American scholars, many of them the top scholars in their field on these subjects, to write about this basically provides students an opportunity to read. And also it's aimed at the general reader because, of course, we want to revive Pan-Africanism as a movement and build bridges with the Caribbean and the Americas as well.
I was about to ask you the importance around ensuring that their voices are heard, because when you think Pan-Africanism, some may think Africa or Africans in Africa, or those issues and conversations and narratives directly affecting Africans in Africa, but you found it important to also include those voices from the Caribbean and also from African Americans. Why was it important?
Well, it was important because if we think about it, Pan-Africanism actually did not start in Africa. Pan-Africanism started in the Caribbean and the Americas. And the first Pan-African conference that was held in 1900 was led by a Trinidadian, Henry Sylvester Williams. And then subsequently, W.E.B. Du Bois, the African-American intellectual giant, was the one that was the moving force in the 5 Pan-African conferences that took place between 1919 and 1945. And Marcus Garvey, of course, from Jamaica, was leading a big mass movement in the US, trying to convince blacks to go back to Africa and rebuild Africa. So it was only in 1945 with the 5th Pan-African Conference in Manchester that leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Hastings Banda, Jomo Kenyatta came to join the movement, and Pan-Africanism moved back home. And then the Organization of African Unity was founded in 1963 as the kind of institutional embodiment of Pan-Africanism. So one needs to acknowledge that the movement was actually born not in Africa, but in the Caribbean and the Americas.
Because we've run out of time, Prof, when I purchase this book and when I read it, what will I find? What are you hoping that I grasp, particularly about Pan-Africanism?
Well, the most important thing is that these are rich, readable essays that are well written, not written in jargon-type academic language, but they're essays on the most important figures of Pan-Africanism. And it also provides a history of Pan-Africanism and how it was a reaction to slavery and colonialism.
All right. Well, Prof, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Professor
very much.
Adekeye Adebajo, of course, edited this book also alongside 37 other contributors who also presented and have their aces in here. You have to get this book. It's really amazing.